When I think about targeting, it's a Venn diagram. It's two dimensions coming together. One is, are you focused on people that ultimately care about the products or services that you sell? But number two, are you reaching out to them at a time when they intend to buy? If you're missing either of those, you're really misfiring the pistol, because it's when the two overlap that they're open to receiving information and you're going to have the most success. Social platforms, I think, offer in an unprecedented way ways to understand what folks care about, but you can also discover intent signals, if you will, that say, hey, I'm on the market, I'm looking around, I'm ready to buy. Secondly, once you find those folks, understanding them, social offers incredible capabilities in that respect, so that the first interaction with them, you have something relevant to share.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Today's guest on Selling with Social is my friend and the head of marketing for LinkedIn Sales Solutions, Justin Shriber. Justin and his team helps buyers, sellers, and marketers connect via the world's largest professional network. Justin, for the last 2 decades, has focused on helping companies accelerate growth by delivering solutions that align marketing, sales, and service with the needs of the customer. He's held roles in product, sales, and marketing organizations at small companies, startups, and large companies like Siebel and Oracle. I couldn't be more excited to have Justin on the show. So please help me welcome Justin Shriber. Justin Shriber, I am so excited to have you on Selling with Social today. It is my distinct pleasure to have you, my friend. Thanks for joining.
Oh, Mario, it's great to be on the show. Thanks so much to you.
No problem. So listen, as I think about your background, you're the head of marketing at LinkedIn Sales Solutions. You've served in multiple executive level roles with companies like Oracle and Aptio, vice president of marketing, regional vice president of the cloud CRM at Oracle. You are clearly a leader in this space when it comes to being able to communicate with sales and marketing. I hope you would agree with me.
Spent a lot of time in sales, Mario. Definitely love it.
Awesome. So do me this favor. Tell our audience, we've got folks listening in who are sales, marketers, social media practitioners, sales influencers. Just do us a favor and tell our audience a little about yourself, my friend.
Sure. First and foremost, I have a busy life. I am the father of 5 kids at different ages. They keep me young and active. I would say that of all of the exposure I have to social, it's interesting that hanging out with my kids is probably the best place where I learn the most about the state of the art. And it's pretty amazing when you think about it, how things have become inverted and now technology is introduced on the home front before it is in the workplace. From a professional perspective, I've seen a lot of different facets of sales. I actually started off my career as a consultant and focused on sales and marketing problems. Had the opportunity at Siebel to work on product and then transitioned into product marketing roles and sales roles. I did have the opportunity to spend some time actually running a sales organization and obviously building products and marketing products that help salespeople to be more successful. And what's been really exciting is to see both from the perspective of a practitioner of the trade, as well as someone who's building tools and selling tools to help those folks, to see how fast the space is evolving.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Going back to what you said about our children, I remember my now 6-year-old, he was 18 months and he picked up our iPad and he punched in the passcode. And I couldn't believe that he actually A, knew the passcode, and B, he started swiping away. I was like, it took me years to figure out how to use a freaking iPad. So I do technology and children, they're growing up now with a binky, and instead of a blanket, it's a binky and an iPad is essentially.
Oh, yeah. It is a scary place, but an exciting place too, to see what these kids are capable of.
Man, I might have to take some more advice from you on child rearing and balancing social, because I only got two, 6 and 3. And the oldest is now saying, Dad, you're always on your phone. Get off your phone. So I need some help there with balancing that out.
There's a good point there, though. And I think we all struggle with this, be we young or old. Social presents an amazing opportunity, but you have to know how to use it. You have to know how to put it to work, because while it can help you build relationships, it can also stand between you and relationships. That goes whether you're trying to interact with your kids, your friends, or business colleagues.
That's a great point. And now the new rule in our house, just so you know, when I leave this office right here, 5:30 till 9, the phone is out of my hand. So you got to go that route. But in any case, look, exciting to hear your background. Excited to have you here on the show. I always ask this question of all my guests: what is one thing that nobody would know about you by looking at your social profiles?
Well, I actually had a really formative experience when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I lived in Chile for a couple of years. It was a phenomenal experience because I got to live with folks that lived down there. And it was a learning opportunity for me. It was also a struggle because I lost my language. I lost my identity from a cultural perspective, and to some extent had to reinvent myself. I came up with a phrase, and it's been interesting how that phrase has stuck with me over time. And the phrase is, happiness is the vision to see it and the grit to get it. What's interesting is when I came to LinkedIn, Jeff has a mantra. His is a 3-part formula, which is success equals thinking big, getting stuff done, and knowing how to have fun. And I like that third facet, knowing how to have fun. But I think it's some of the tough experiences that you have in life that really help to form who you are and what your philosophy is about life.
I love it. So let me repeat that quote. Happiness is the vision to see it and the grit to get it.
That's it.
All right. I'm done. I'm sold. I'm going to use that one. That's going in this podcast on the show notes on this show.
Bumper sticker, baby. Bumper sticker material.
All right. I'll give you attribution for the quote, but I like it. That's great. I love that. You've got to have the vision for it to be able to see happiness, and you got to be willing to go get it. So I love it. That's great. And that's not on your social profiles, huh?
That is not. You got me thinking maybe I got to add that one on there.
We might have to add that one on there. Well, we can do personal branding for you if you need it.
All right. I'm looking for a little help in that area.
Awesome. All right. Listen, I want to narrow this focus down in today's discussion, really focusing in on talking to corporate leaders. And I'm not talking about sales leaders and marketing leaders. That's included when I say corporate leaders. We're talking about anybody that is in a position of oversight or has responsibilities, namely your C-level, VP level, director level types of leaders. But anybody that is in a leadership position at a company. I want to spend just some time talking to these folks and really talk through what it means to be a social leader and how that can impact one's business. So let's spend a moment, though, talking about today's buyer and the way today's buyer engages or now buys, and how has that changed over the years?
I think that's the right place to start. When you're a leader, the conversation always needs to start with the person that you're serving. So that's going to be the folks that you're leading. It's also going to be, if you're a company, the customers that you're serving, and if you're in sales, the buyers that you approach. Going back to that conversation we were having earlier about how our lives have changed on the personal front, you think about how your world is different when you go home today versus 20 years ago. We watch Netflix. Maybe we go somewhere via Uber. We get our news via Google. And all of these technologies are based on the premise that they can understand who you are and what you care about based on a trail of exhaust that you leave. You are becoming more and more conditioned to expect that all of these technologies anticipate what you want. What's interesting is that while there are a lot of highly technical algorithms that work behind the scenes, from an end user perspective, we feel in a strange sort of way like we have a relationship with these technologies, like it's personal. I know at the end of a tough day, I can go home and Netflix is there and they're waiting for me and they got just the show I need.
Right.
And there's an emotional, it's obviously different, but there's kind of an emotional relationship you're developing with these brands.
Yeah.
Because they do know who you are. That expectation, whether you're cognizant of it or not, you take it to work with you. And when you interact with people on a professional level, you have that same expectation. If Netflix can do it, why can't this person that I'm interacting with on the sales front do it for me? I think that's what business leaders need to understand, is that the expectations of buyers and how they want to be treated has changed in a very fundamental way. In fact, some of the conventional techniques that we used to use in sales that were built around the premise that you can't really get to know someone until you meet them face to face are actually undermining relationships today. You know, Mario, if I met you for the first time and I said, hey, Mario, great to meet you. Let me ask you a couple questions. You're immediately shutting down because you're saying, wait a second, this person doesn't know me. I don't have time for questions. They need to prove value. Just like when I log into Netflix, they don't ask me what I want to see. They show me a couple of recommendations. I think as a starting place, recognize that the expectations of the people you're dealing with has changed fundamentally.
That's a fantastic answer. It reminds me of a couple of slides I actually have in a keynote that I give, but it's the age of digital personalization. And to your point, you use the example of Netflix and Google, but I've come to expect that every few months, I don't even know how often I order this, but it's it's the shave lotion that you use from The Art of Shaving, right? Mm-hmm. It's that I order it from Amazon, and Amazon knows somehow, some way, every time I log on, the right time when I'm about out of it. And it tells me, hey, Mario, about X number of months ago, you ordered this. Are you sure you don't want to order this right now? You know, I've come to expect that it's going to serve me up that personalized information and content, that it gets to know me. And I love your explanation and illustration with Netflix that, you know, you are kind of building an emotional attachment to these things. You'd expect that. Yeah. That's fantastic. So how do you see this changing in the way salespeople operate and or sales leaders operate with our buyers? The expectation is that we as salespeople should now make sure that we are personalizing information and outreach.
First of all, what hasn't changed, the focus on the customer always being king, and recognizing that as a salesperson, we are in the service of the customer. But the approach to fulfilling that mission certainly has changed. It becomes incumbent upon us to do our homework, to pay attention to this person, take a personal interest in who they are and what they care about, and use the breadcrumbs that they're leaving behind to be able to dial into what matters to them. So that on our first interaction, and obviously you're not going to be able to hit it out of the park, but at least you can come in with something that's in the ballpark of relevancy. Sure. And based on that, gain their respect. And from there, enter into the discussion and earn the right to ask some questions and then do the follow-up.
That's a great point. How does that affect what leaders should or should not be doing of an organization?
I think it starts with leaders living what they're preaching. What's amazing about social is that it gives you insights not only into the customers. I mentioned there are two groups that you serve, the customers, but also the people that you're leading. And I found in my own career and some of the great leaders that I admire that social becomes a powerful tool of leadership for those on the inside. If you're paying attention to the achievements, the interests, the discussions of the people that you're leading and taking part in those and stepping into a face-to-face conversation at a point that maybe is one level deeper than you otherwise would, that's going to send a powerful message to people. One, that you care about them. Number two, that you're using technology in an appropriate way to strengthen a relationship. And number three, that it's just part of doing business.
Yeah. I think that's become a challenge to a lot of leaders is they don't understand what their role is. And the benefit to this podcast that I want to go through is really break that down for leaders to help them understand, like, how can they make an impact and what should they be doing or should not be doing in terms of helping sales and or customer success, or anybody who touches the customer for that matter, to be able to improve relationships, grow revenue, those types of things. And so on that line of thought, can you define for us, Justin, what does it mean to be a social leader?
First and foremost, a social leader is someone that is focused, as the term says, socially on others. Secondly, they're able to skillfully use technologies in order to build stronger connections and stronger relationships. And then third, from a leadership perspective, they're able to help others to take a step forward in their own use of those capabilities to further whatever it is they're going after.
And how does that impact bottom line, as an example?
Yeah.
Or morale or culture or you name it.
So that's where I love the discussion most. There are some material and some measurable benefits to being more social from a business perspective. Obviously, on the LinkedIn Sales Solutions side, we're very focused on how you can use social to further sales relationships. We've done a lot of analysis. We have, as part of our product, an ability to plug into CRM systems. We can literally see from cradle to grave how deals progress. How did you engage initially? Did you use social technologies? How did the deal move through the various stages of the funnel? And ultimately, when it closed, what were the parameters associated with the close? We're then able to compare deals where social technologies were used to those where they weren't used. On average, what we found is that pipelines are 1.2x larger among sales professionals that are using social. We found that close rates are 1.3x higher among those that are using social technologies. So across any number of parameters, you can see major impact.
Gotcha. And coming back to social leaders specifically, top performing leaders are social leaders. There was a study, I think it was done by, I think it's the Altimeter Group and LinkedIn. I think it was back from 2014, which talked about a couple of different components, but one of them that stuck out to me was that social leaders are 58% more likely to attract talent, the talent that they want, as opposed to those that are not. Why is that? Why is that the case?
I have a great anecdotal story along those lines. I have a friend who works at a premium sales organization, really built around sales, B2B, one of the largest in the industry. I was talking to her and she said, I was trying to recruit a top candidate the other day, and I thought I had almost closed this individual. Their last question to me was, do you use a certain type of social technology in conjunction with your selling effort? I had to be honest, and I said, no, we don't. And the candidate said, then I don't want to work here. She lost that individual for that reason.
Wow.
Great sales professionals have a system. They have a philosophy. They want to have the opportunity to work in organizations that embrace that encourage that. When they hear triggers like, I don't support that, or I don't understand that, or the people that I'm surrounding myself with, they don't do that, those are all red flags. And more as these social technologies are tools of the trade, those are major gotchas that say, hey, this is an organization that hasn't kept up with the times.
Yeah, interesting. There's also, I remember a quote that was given by Richard Branson that talked about using social media is a vital way to communicate, and it helps you to keep your ear to the ground, improve your business, essentially, right? And so if you think about some of those things that executives can find and see and how they can interact with new talent, existing employees, as you mentioned earlier, and most importantly with buyers and customers to grow revenue, I think there's a clear winning reason why executives would want to become more social as a leader.
Yeah. Last year we ran a global survey and we looked at social platforms and the impact that they were having on sellers. Of the respondents, we were able to segment them into high performers and the rest. And we were able to look at, of the high performers, how many were using social technologies in some incarnation. 90% of them were using social technologies. Maybe not surprising, but what I found really interesting was that of that 90%, 80% of them worked for companies that had institutionalized the use of social platforms. They literally had programs, centers of excellence. So going back to your previous question, people that are embracing these technologies want to work for companies that have actually institutionalized and are giving them the support to be successful. And there's a very strong correlation between closing business, using social technologies, and setting up programs to help people use social technologies to close business.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think in that study also too as well that I mentioned earlier to support what you just said, which I thought was very interesting. Socially engaged companies, employees, I believe it was 57% more likely to leverage social media to drive sales when you've got leaders who are socially engaged. And so, if you think about the channels of which our buyers are engaging with us on, it's any number of ways, right? It may be through a phone call. It may be through an email marketing program. It definitely could be through social. But I also have clients or prospective prospects who actually text message with me, right? So actually engaging with our buyers in the way that they want to engage, and that being okay within an organization, especially with the use of social, will allow you to be able to actually touch your buyers the way they want to be touched. And I think that's important for leaders just to understand that the one size doesn't fit all anymore, right? We just can't tell a sales organization, go make 100 cold calls and go send 100 emails and bada bing, bada boom, you hit your number. Like it's a much more complex formula to be a salesperson today, given the way customers want to interact. What's your thought on that?
I think along the lines of cold calling, again, the rules have changed. If you think about the evolution of sales, it started off as a person-to-person, door-to-door, me to you, and there was success, but limitations in terms of scale you could achieve. With the introduction of all of these new scalable technologies, first the phone, then the internet, CRM systems, power dialers, suddenly you introduce scale into the system and it unlocked new levels of productivity. The challenge was that you lost the level of personalization. That was okay for a while. And to some extent, unfortunately, the buyer, the prospect, they were treated as an infinite commodity. There are any number of those folks out there, and I can just keep power dialing until I hit the folks. What's changed now, though, is in the era of social, word gets out. And if you abuse the buyer, if you abuse the prospect, not only do you lose them, but they let other folks know. Suddenly what was viewed as an infinite resource has become a very finite resource. So the name of the game is, how do you create that personal experience of the door-to-door salesperson at scale? And I think personalization at scale is the most exciting aspect of social capabilities.
Yeah, I cannot disagree with you. I think that's a technology that helps with personalization. They serve you up that content right at that moment in time of what someone may be engaging with as a salesperson. And I think Navigator is one tool that helps you do those types of things. And there are other tools that are out there as well, but using technology to be able to serve up that content that you can personalize outreach is really the sexy stuff that's coming down the pipe, right? To help salespeople out.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to a lot of LinkedIn users, and what they tell us is, we love the capabilities of LinkedIn. We can follow people. We can see what they're engaging on. As a salesperson, though, I might have 100 accounts, and at any one of those accounts, I'm trying to monitor 10, 20 people. Suddenly, I've got literally thousands of people I need to keep tabs on. So what Sales Navigator does is it solves that second problem. It takes the power of LinkedIn, but it essentially is your set of eyes and ears that surfaces the right information for you at the right time so that you see what's going on. You can reach out appropriately, but you don't have to sit and wade through 2,000 profiles a day to make sure that you're not missing anything.
Yeah, good point. Well, I think we've established that there's definite place for leaders to become social. And again, we're not talking about just sales and marketing leaders. We're talking about leaders across the organization to be able to recruit new talent, to be able to reach the customer, to amplify messaging. Brand is another one. So let's talk a little bit about how can leaders actually demonstrate social leadership. Give us some advice. I'm a CIO, COO, CSO. Tell me, Justin, how can I demonstrate social leadership?
As I mentioned, it starts with your own use of the technology, and I think that comes down to a strategy. How do you want to use social technologies to engage folks? What I typically see is, this is fundamental, but it starts with, who are you? Who do you stand? What do you stand for? What do you care about? What causes are you passionate about? And from there, thinking through the channels that are available and at your discretion in order to engage on those topics. The best leaders, I actually see them, they've got a plan and they say, here are my issues, here's what I care about. And then they're able to look at the social channels and actually segment out the channel that makes the most sense based on the cause. Facebook tends to be more focused on the personal side of life, but you get into maybe some of those issues that are near and dear to you in terms of extracurricular causes that you want to embrace. Instagram, obviously, a very visual paradigm, video becoming more and more a way that leaders are communicating. LinkedIn tends to be the platform where your professional profile is maintained and built out. And then Twitter, is obviously, there's a certain form factor associated with that. So whether or not, you've got quotes that you want to send out or links that are relevant to your topics, Twitter becomes a great platform for that. Certainly not a one size fits all. It can be overwhelming. So my advice is always start off with a clear understanding of what the causes are that you care about, and then maybe pick one or two platforms and use those platforms, get started and understand them very well. If that's going well for you, think about introducing another platform into the mix. Once you've established that as a leader, you're embracing social, I think number two is to think through strategically what social can do for your business. And there are a couple of different options that you've got. Inevitably, there are people in your organization that have already embraced social. This, I find, is a great opportunity to enfranchise those people, empower them, bring them in and say, look, I don't understand this, or I've been thinking about this, or this is important to me. I need somebody that can help me pull this together. You got two wins. Number one, you've been able to enlist someone else in a really important cause in your organization. And number two, you're probably going to get some really good thinking. And then lastly, think through, once you've got your strategy, how to enable people on the ground that may be just as intimidated as you are and maybe a few steps behind where you are. If you're ambitious, set up a center of excellence where you've got people whose job it is to actually empower people, monitor the success, and show the impact that it's having on the business. If you're not quite that ambitious or don't have those resources, you can do some simple things, sending out notes, tutorials, primers, and then championing and showcasing the people that are doing a great job. So from the personal embracing to the building of the strategy to some tactical things you can do with people on the ground, that's a winning formula that I see time and time again, really helping to transform companies.
I love that. That's some really great advice. If you think about what you just said, it's really having a voice, number one, specific to maybe things that are personal to you, maybe your industry, and thought leadership related. And I've got a client who actually suffers from epilepsy, and he is the president of the Northern California chapter of the Epileptic Foundation. And so not only does he publish content related to his company and brand, but he actually published his company to create awareness around epilepsy. And it's interesting because as you see this content, you wouldn't normally think of it to be on LinkedIn, but it actually is helping to create an authentic human face to his voice. And as well as behind this company is this individual who's talking about that. And it actually humanizes like the way I want to do business with that individual. Is that what you meant when you talked about picking some things that are personal related?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. I'll share with you one of my most inspiring moments in business. Many people know Clayton Christensen. He authored Innovator's Dilemma and has done some great work, especially in technology. I heard him speaking at an event. It was a sales summit, chief sales officers present, about 200. Shortly after he had a stroke, he came out and he spoke. He started his presentation by saying, I've had a stroke recently. I'm having trouble remembering some of the words that I need to share. So if I get into that situation, I'm just going to let you know, and please fill in the blank. So sure enough, 5 minutes into his presentation, he says, there's a company, they make phones, they make music players. What's the name of it? And somebody yelled out, Apple. He said, that's right, it was Apple. And he went on to deliver some brilliant remarks. I remember the remarks, but what I really remember is the authenticity and the humility that he showed. We live in an era where I think it is incredibly important that we're authentic and that we are true to ourselves and who we are, and that we share that with others. Now, obviously, you want to put boundaries around that based on what you feel comfortable with. But if there is something that is truly important to you, I think there's a way to express that through social channels that's going to help to make a connection with other people and strengthen the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the challenges today is we live in such a virtual society, the communication strategy. So many companies are cutting off real estate and shrinking, and everybody's the work from home environment. So oftentimes we've become friends over the years, Justin, but I've maybe sat down with you 2 or 3 times, but we've spoken way more times than that, right? Yeah. So we develop this virtual relationship, and I think adding that human element, the human touch to personalizing who you are as a person, whether you're a social leader or whether you're a social salesperson or a social marketer, that's critical to your individual brand. But one more step, and you touched on this earlier, which is what does it say to the company that you work for? And I think that shows that your company is innovative. It shows that you're socially engaged and that you're aware, and not just on personal aspects, but even when you're talking about things that the company can bring to the table in terms of helping the company's brand awareness campaign, if you would.
Yep, absolutely.
Speaking of that, what effect on the company brand does having an army of social leaders create?
This is a really interesting topic because I think historically we've thought as salespeople as the folks that go out and they sell the products. Marketing is the voice of the company. And when we think about branding, when we think about public persona, it really is marketing. I've seen, being close to the sales side of the business, that hasn't necessarily been inverted, but the voice of the sales channels has been dialed up significantly because it's being amplified based on the social presence. I mean, if you think about it, and I'll just use LinkedIn as an example. If you work at a company and you've got 1,000 salespeople, so a larger company, and all of those salespeople, there are, I don't know how many visitors per salesperson per day. You start to multiply that math out, and suddenly the impressions that are being generated by the salespeople via their profiles rivals some of the marketing campaigns. Because of that, it becomes incredibly important now that from a marketing perspective, we think about those sales profiles as part of the identity of the company. This is the challenge. Salespeople are unique individuals. They bring their own personalities and points of view to the table. Individuals are going to recognize immediately if marketing has washed all of the profiles. You can't do that. At the same time, you don't want salespeople going rogue and representing your brand in ways that don't reflect what your core values are. The best companies find a happy medium between the two. They are comfortable letting the personalities of the salespeople come through, but at the same time, they've provided materials, they provided coaching so that when those salespeople are talking about the products, the services, the brand identity, there's a consistency there. And, I like to say that social is also a great Darwinian tool. You find out really quick who you don't want working for you because they self-identify. And it's not about policing them anymore. It's just about escorting them out of the organization. Because if you don't have someone with the maturity to handle a social channel, they're probably not going to be the best fit moving forward.
Yeah. When you think about leaders being engaged on social, there's this struggle or balance that people are trying to find. And I'd like your opinion on this, the struggle versus the balance. Build a voice of thought leadership in their segment or industry, or build the brand of the company, or is it both?
I see it as both. More and more thought leadership and brand are becoming synonymous.
Yeah.
A brand is not necessarily anymore about a logo, colors, a tagline. It needs to have real meaning attached to it. And people can very quickly get at what you as a company stand for, and they can see the caliber of people that you've got working based on the shares. I love this tactic, and I've shared it with a lot of folks, but it really gets at your question. The reality is that a lot of times salespeople don't feel comfortable in producing thought leadership pieces. And yet they are interacting with more innovators in their industry than anyone else. That's their job. Day to day, they're talking to people. They're finding out what's going on, hearing about the problems, hearing about the solutions. In their minds, they've got the proto-matter of great thought leadership. One of the things that we encourage our sales team to do is to set up interviews, informational interviews with prospects, with customers on a specific topic. We'll provide, from a marketing perspective, an interview guide. Many times the salespeople don't even need that because they're great at having discussions. They'll record that, send it to the marketing department. The marketing department transcribes it, turns it into a long-form piece of content, sends it back over to the salesperson. They can update it if they like, and then they post it. You now have a great happy medium where the salesperson was leading the discussion, but maybe in areas where they don't feel as comfortable, marketing can step in. That's the example of a great collaboration that companies are using to get it right.
That's a fantastic idea. I hadn't thought of that. I might take that one for our own campaigns that we help companies with.
I'm waiting for the royalty check between the bumper sticker and this one. I'm keeping you in business, Mario.
I'm going to owe you a couple of bucks here or there. Yeah, that's a great point there. And it's interesting because so many people want to keep and own their identity. And there are a lot of companies. We had a client that we worked with. It was in the Fortune 100 space. And when we went to engage with social training as well as branding, we were handed a 75-page document of all the things that you're allowed to say and not allowed to say on social. Mm-hmm. Now, I thought this was interesting. We combed through it with a fine-tooth comb for obvious reasons. We had to deliver to our client. And all of our training had to be encapsulated in this 75 pages. But I thought about this and I thought, my God, if I was a salesperson, I'd get this 75-page book right? I had to be at least 20,000 words on it. The book. And what would I do? Should I not even talk about the company? And I think companies need to start realizing that they want their employees to engage on their behalf, but they fail to remember that to control so much is probably a disservice, in my opinion. But to control so much is going to be challenging because really what they're doing is they're renting the employees' real estate, which is their social space, their social network. And that's very important for leaders as you start, I think leaders start thinking about this concept of social, that we want them as a leader, we want our employees to represent their own individual thought leadership and the company brand as well. So I cannot disagree with you.
Yeah. There are a couple of considerations. If, for example, you're in financial services, if you deal extensively with the government, there are specific lines that you can and cannot cross. And so I certainly sympathize in those situations, and it's important to be crystal clear. That said, to your point, when you hand me a 75-page document, what you're really handing me is a stop sign that says don't engage via social.
Exactly right.
I'm probably not going to step beyond that. And I think that leaders need to be empathetic to the message that's being received when that kind of a document comes across the table.
Yeah, 100%. And this is not just one company. I mean, I've seen this multiple times where the do's and don'ts, and you've got this long PowerPoint, 1 hour long training, certification, sign the form here. Yeah. And I think there's just a level of trust. It's kind of like, are you on the phones with your salespeople and monitoring everything that they say? It's no different. The channel is just different. That's all. That's the only thing that's changed.
Along those lines, though, I also recognize the concern coming from companies. Because if you look at a lot of social, it's the Wild West out there. Any topics are fair game, whatever, images, anything you can find out there. And I think that one of the things that we are learning just as a society is how to use social maturely and also how to separate personal interactions from professional interactions. And so I think it's incumbent upon employees as well to accept the responsibility and show that they can be responsible, and that they do represent a company and they need to represent that company well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think generally speaking, most employees are going to represent the company well. There will be momentary lapses of judgment. That is for sure.
Yeah.
And then we manage to the majority as opposed to the minority of challenges that might take place. All right, let me just switch gears here. We talked about the benefit that social leaders have and a social organization has on the brand. Talk a little bit about the benefit it may or may not have in terms of accelerating sales opportunities.
I think there are a couple of ways that social can impact selling. I tend to break it down into 3 areas. The first is the way that you're targeting a potential audience. And when I think about targeting, it's a Venn diagram. It's 2 dimensions coming together. One is, are you focused on people that ultimately care about the products or services that you sell? But number 2, are you reaching out to them at a time when they intend to buy? If you're missing either of those, you're really misfiring the pistol, because it's when the 2 overlap that they're open to receiving information and you're going to have the most success. Social platforms, I think, offer in an unprecedented way ways to understand what folks care about, but you can also discover intent signals, if you will, that say, hey, I'm on the market, I'm looking around, I'm ready to buy. Secondly, once you find those folks, understanding them, social offers incredible capabilities in that respect. So that the first interaction with them, you have something relevant to share. I talked before about earning the right to ask questions. It's no longer, in my mind, acceptable to walk in with an open-ended question as the very first thing that you ask. At least give me something that is going to resonate. It might not be totally on point, but show me that you have some value to add, and then I'll give you permission to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Lastly, once you understand the person, being able to engage them throughout the sales cycle, mission critical. That starts with how you get the introduction. Interesting studies around if you're engaged via a cold call, how much faster the person's going to drop you than if you are engaged via a warm introduction. Even if I don't necessarily want to talk to your friend, Mario, if you've introduced me to your friend, I feel a responsibility to you. And that might buy me a couple more days, or the seller a couple more days, to establish the rapport that I need to establish. And then once I've got that rapport, using social to track, am I hitting the mark? Is the person paying attention? Do I need to change things up a little bit? All those little things can make the difference between losing a deal and actually seeing that through to the close.
Yeah, that's excellent points you gave there, Justin. I certainly appreciate that. And I love the point you made about the social listening and being there when the buyer is ready to buy. Just fundamentally, one of the biggest challenges when you look at why has a deal stalled in a salesperson's pipeline, one of the largest reasons is because, well, the customer's not ready to buy. The customer was not there. The salesperson thought they were there, but the customer was not there yet. So fantastic point. Three things. I want to talk about three things that leaders can do to help accelerate sales. I came up with a list, and actually, I'll be honest with you, I plagiarized off of LinkedIn. So I guess it may be your list now, Justin, and I may owe you some more money again. But this actually came from your LinkedIn executive playbook, but it talked about connecting with top-level executives. If you're a leader, make sure you connect with the top-level executives at your top 100 customers. And I thought that was a fantastic point. Empower your sales organization to leverage their network. So let's just pretend you're my VP of marketing, Justin, and I see that you're connected to John Smith at customer ABC. I can come to you freely and say, Justin, can you introduce me to John Smith at customer ABC? And there'll be no concerns from your sales leadership that says, oh, you need to go through me first, right? So being able to have that open and free discussion and be engaged where the customers are. And I added this fourth one is actually my thing, which is create a lead. Help the organization create a lead, for God's sakes. Give us something. What do you think about those? Are there any others that you can think of?
I agree with all of those. There's a lot of power in that point you made around making introductions. That's a tradition that we have here at LinkedIn. We've got tools that facilitate that. I'll share a great example. I had a colleague of mine reach out to me and said, I'm going into a sales meeting and I just noticed that you're connected to the person that I'll be meeting with. So I looked down and it turned out that it was my brother, whom I just had dinner with like 2 nights before, and he neglected to mention that he was going to be meeting with LinkedIn.
That's a good one.
And I had never met the salesperson on the LinkedIn side, so we didn't know each other. But through some capabilities that we offer through Sales Navigator, I'd given him permission to see who I was connected with. And he reached out and he said, I see you're connected, would love just some insight. And I said, I'm happy to help out. Talk to my brother. He gave me the lay of the land. These are the 5 people. Here's where this person is. Here's where that person is. And that salesperson from LinkedIn went in armed with a perspective that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Didn't waste my brother's time and ended up having a very successful meeting as a result of that. That story sounds incredible. And when I tell that story to people are like, all right, well, what are the odds? You'd be amazed at how frequently that happens, how often you're connected to someone that I need to know and that you can provide insight. And just that kind of a warm introduction, that kind of background information, it makes the experience so much more meaningful for everyone involved.
Yeah, great point. I love that. We talked about this earlier as well, about being a social leader helps you to attract talent. And I think it really goes to show, I mean, you gave that great example earlier that someone said, hey, what tools are you using in your organization? This organization is not right for me. And the same thing is true. I think leaders need to also understand that when a salesperson or anybody for that matter is coming into their organization, they're going to look to see what this organization is all about. What kind of culture might it possess? What kind of things are taking place in the workspace? And I think social leaders need to understand that people are checking them out as much as they're checking the candidates out, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if we do that, we can definitely start honing in on better talent and talent that actually meets the culture criteria of what we're looking for. Love it. Love it. I want to ask you, if you want to be a social leader, what is one thing you can do right now to be able to help drive social in the organization?
I think there are a few people today that would say, I am a true social leader. I acknowledge that I work with a lot of folks. The most important thing that those individuals can do is raise their hand and say, I want to be a social leader, but I'm not exactly sure how, and get some help. And go to people in your organization. I mentioned this before, but you'll build an incredible amount of credibility with the folks. There are people in your organization that understand this well and that would love to help you out with it.
Very good advice. Justin, if someone wants to connect with you or reach out to you, ask you any questions, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, obviously, LinkedIn is a great channel, which I am biased towards, but I'm constantly engaging on that platform through posts that I make, comments that I make. Obviously, InMail is another channel. Reach out to me via Twitter at @jshriber, and happy to continue with the conversation.
And if you're listening to this show and you're reaching out to Justin as a result of this show, put in a hashtag selling with social. I heard you on selling with social, and it'll remind Justin that you did your homework and you heard something that he was on. So Justin, fantastic having you on the program, my friend. It's always great speaking with you. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and I can't thank you enough for joining the Selling with Social podcast today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, Mario.
All right, bud. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Selling with Social podcast. I'm super pumped that you are our guest today. Here's what I want you to do right now. Go to jr.com/podcast and support our podcast, please, by distributing it out anywhere you can get it to on social. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. You'll find all the instructions there on the site on how to subscribe to the Selling with Social podcast. Until the next show, keep on rocking. Mario Martinez Jr. out.